On the Missouri left tackle situation, it's not time to panic, but it's definitely okay to worry.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And yes, a heavy offensive line type of show. Suddenly, Cayden Green goes from maybe being Missouri's best player, at least if you look at the nation's summation of Missouri. Well, I think he's now Missouri's maybe most pivotal player on the roster if recent events stick. Also on the basketball side, Tristan Reed taking a visit to Michigan State. And after Missouri missed out on his teammate Ethan Taylor, another big man, well, is this a reason to worry as well? Plenty to get to on the show. First of all, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. By the way, just really quickly as well, a couple corrections. By the way, previous episode, speaking of that Missouri offensive line, it wasn't just Cayden Green who was shuffled out to left tackle. Well, Curtis Piegler, by the way, was starting as Missouri's right guard, at least in a recent practice. And I don't know what I said. Did I say Jacob Piegler? I just knew as soon as I said that. I think it was the first time I've said that young man's name on the podcast ever. Well, I was in the back of my head, I thought, I think I got that one wrong. So it is indeed Curtis Piegler, and that does give you a bit of an idea of what's happening with the Missouri offensive line situation. I also erroneously called Marquise Johnson yesterday Demetrius Johnson, another former Missouri great. So I guess I was just a little bit tired. What can I say? But you know what? At this point, it's still a time to talk more about the left tackle position because, well, I talked about it on yesterday's program, and I thought, you know what? All things being equal, even though I don't 100% know what to make of this, I'm definitely more worried than I am anything else. And I think it's 100% okay for all of you to be a little bit worried. Let's just not 100% panic just yet. And before I get into my entire take on this, I will say Gerard Hamilton over at Power Mizzou is doing a great job of covering the Tigers on a daily basis. Reminded us recently of this quote from Missouri offensive line coach Brandon Jones. And this notably, very importantly, I would say, was this past March during spring football. Coach Jones says maybe in some emergency situations, Green will play left tackle. I really do believe he has the ability to play both left guard and left tackle. I just know he's a little bit more comfortable inside. So just trying to get him settled in there and just not necessarily moving a strength or returning piece. That's really kind of where the musical chairs thing happens. So I'm trying to avoid that as much as I can. So I'm going to reread just the end of that quote there for emphasis. That's really where the musical chairs thing kind of happens. So I'm trying to avoid that as much as I can. That was Brandon Jones back in March. Now it is August 12th as I record this podcast. August 13th as you're listening to this here. Well, apparently we did not avoid the musical chairs. Not only, again, we have Curtis Piegler. Let me make sure I get it right this time. We have him moving to right guard, which was vacated by Michigan transfer Dominic Gadis. He's now playing left guard, and now Cayden Green, the former All-SEC caliber preseason type of left guard, is now at left tackle. Now, it is important to remember that Cayden Green at Oklahoma as a true freshman did play some snaps at left tackle. From my memory, about 10% of his snaps were played at left tackle, 90%, of course, during a starter's load, by the way. This wasn't a small amount of snaps for Green as a true freshman at Oklahoma. But with a starter's load, he still played 90% of his snaps at left guard. I'll have to say, when he initially transferred, the Lee Summit product, from Oklahoma, I thought, well, maybe that's why he transferred here, because he would rather play left tackle. In the NFL, here's one reason you might think that. For decades, the tackles have been the most highest paid players on the offensive line, though I will say that spread has narrowed over the years. There's centers and guards that make a lot of money in pro football these days, but it is still definitely the tackles that make the most money in the NFL. That makes sense. You're trying to protect what is the most important player on the field, the quarterback, in their most vulnerable spots, which is pass protection, especially the blind spot of said pass protection. But I will say this. Well, I think it's totally fair to worry about this. Obviously, based on Brandon Jones' words, this is not an ideal situation. And just based on, hey, for your everydayers, you'll remember this from yesterday's program. I compared it to the Kansas City Chiefs situation where another left guard, Joe Thuney, a very effective left guard, was bounced out to left tackle. Well, the Chiefs got away with it in the playoffs, but in the Super Bowl against the Eagles and their excellent pass rush, not so much. So, again, I do want to point something out here, though. For as much as we can rub our hands together and worry about this, I think this might look silly in retrospect in a couple of months or so, because obviously, hopefully the offensive line is going to protect the quarterback every week. Hopefully we maul the opposition backwards in the running game, and we're all going to laugh at this discussion. I'll just say this. If Cayden Green is as good at left tackle as he was at left guard, then I think Missouri's going to be fine. I really do, because switching Dominique Gadis from right guard to left guard on the interior, that doesn't particularly worry me. What worries me is with a new quarterback, well, Missouri would like to give him as clean a pocket as possible. That's always true, but it's especially true with whether it's Bo Perbula or Sam Horn. You've got relative inexperience there. You want to make it as easy on the quarterback as possible. That probably starts with your play calling, but I think secondly, for sure, it's about the pass protection. So bottom line here is, while we can all wring our hands and chew our fingernails all offseason, all fall camp here if we want, the bottom line here is, I think if Cayden Green holds up at left tackle, I think we're going to be fine. If he doesn't, well, then it's a big problem. It's not really about the other interior offensive line positions to me. As long as Cayden Green, if he happens to be a really good left tackle, then I genuinely think we're going to look back on this period and laugh at it a little bit. And while I thought it was pretty hilarious that once again Missouri does not get the benefit of the doubt here in the preseason AP poll, well, I have to say, what happened to Missouri, the disrespect shown here, not without precedent, but it is incredibly rare, so I'll have some more context there, and also why Tristan Reed has become a really important get for Missouri's high school recruiting class. Let's talk about that here. But first, I want to tell you, Monarch Money is the way forward. When it comes to financial planning, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments. We're talking LLC accounts if you're a small business type of owner. Well, that's why there is Monarch Money. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without even ever touching a spreadsheet. Nobody wants to mess with all those calculations and stuff. Let's have Monarch do it for you. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. So I apologize for not having the full time frame here, but Eli Hoff of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch had some great context of really just how disrespected, if you want to put it that way. Heck, maybe it'll end up being right, but that's how I'm looking at it right now. Just how disrespected Missouri has been here in the preseason top 25. Well, if you look at the AP poll here, out of the last 74 times that a team has finished with back-to-back double-digit wins, well, 70 of those 74 times, those teams have been ranked in the top 25. The 4 who weren't, well, you guessed it, of course, one of them, Missouri, in 2025. Also, the Washington Huskies just this past season. Also, Oklahoma State in 2018 and Wisconsin in 2016. Again, those 4 teams left out of the preseason top 25 despite consecutive double-digit win totals. And Washington, I'll point out, in 2024 specifically, well, they had a new coach. That's a real big factor and variable there. Missouri, on the other hand, well, not only do they not have a new coach, they have the same offensive coordinator, the same defensive coordinator, a top 10 portal class. And yes, as I pointed out in the first segment, offensive line right now is a real concern, and quarterback is a real unknown. And really, I should say offensive line, while a concern, also an unknown as well. Like I said, I think if Cayden Green, if he can become a cornerstone there on the offensive line at left tackle, or someone else for that matter, then I think Missouri will be okay. I really believe in Brandon Jones' ability to build a running game, so if we can protect the passer, I think we're going to be okay. But again, back to my point of a previous episode here, which is the disrespect of Missouri, especially in comparison to a program like Indiana. Like I said, I understand why Oklahoma gets the benefit of the doubt, to give you another example. But Indiana, by the way, not only did I view last season as, hey, well, they finally had a good season. That may have seemed like a little bit of hyperbole to some of you, but there was a post that went viral online that had the teams and programs with the most losses in college football history. Who was number 1 with the most losses in the history of college football? You guessed it, the Indiana Hoosiers. The bottom 5, by the way, 3 of them members of the Big Ten: Indiana, Northwestern, Rutgers, of course a recent addition, Wake Forest, and finally the Kansas Jayhawks. That one felt good. Come on, let's all just have a nice applause for the Kansas Jayhawks, who are the 5th losingest team in college football history. And you know what? I know we're just a little over 2 weeks away from football kicking off, but I got to talk some basketball too. There's a ton of interesting stuff happening behind the scenes. And after Missouri surprisingly was left out of Ethan Taylor's top 6 schools, the center playing ball at Link Academy in Branson, well, suddenly his teammate, another center, Tristan Reed, by the way, listed as a center as well. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that those 2 players never play at the same time, at least on that Link Academy squad. So anyway, according to Justin Thind he's Michigan State's 24/7 guy. Well, some news here as Michigan State will host Tristan Reed, the 4-star center, again from Link Academy, for an official visit on September 20th. Well, because, once again, among other things, Ethan Taylor spurning Missouri, I think Reed becomes an important guy because I think Missouri, well, with Jason Crow in the fold, you've already are off to one heck of a start. The combo guard, maybe the most pure scorer in the entire country. And not only that, according to 24/7 Sports, he's ranked 5th in the country, and only J.J. Andrews, the Little Rock product, committed to Arkansas. Those are the only 2 guys in the top 25 committed right now to any school. So Missouri off to a heck of a start here. And I think as far as shooters go, I think Missouri's in good position with a couple of them in this 2026 class. But when it comes to big man, I think Ethan Taylor and Tristan Reed were basically plan 1A and 1B. So suddenly, I think Reed becomes an important guy. And with Tom Izzo kicking the tires, getting an official visit here in about a month, well, that's a scary proposition, or certainly a challenging proposition. That's for sure if you're Dennis Gates and his staff, because not only is Michigan State and Tom Izzo, obviously he's a historically great coach, a Hall of Fame type coach at a great program. Well, Tom Izzo also already has one commit from one of Tristan Reed's teammates at Link Academy, that being point guard Carlos Medlock. By the way, for you everydayers, I know I've made a big deal about Link Academy's dominance in this class. 6 of the top 7 ranked players from the state are from Link Academy. Well, if you think I've gone overboard on this particular observation, the previous year, the top 5 players in the state all went to Link Academy. The year before that, the top 8 players all went to Link Academy, including T.O. Barrett, by the way, the 5th-ranked player in Missouri that year. All of those players ranked ahead of T.O. Barrett, by the way. Trey Johnson was number 1, who went to Texas and was a top 10 pick in this past NBA draft. Plus, you had commitments to Alabama, USC, and North Carolina. These were all teammates, again, ranked ahead of T.O. Barrett. So, clearly, getting in good with Link Academy is an obvious and smart move for Tim Fuller, Dennis Gates, Kyle Smith-Peters, and everybody else associated with Missouri basketball, because obviously the best players in the Midwest are not just suddenly being born in Branson, Missouri. They're going there. And this trend started really big time with the 2022 class. Post-COVID, it started sprinkling in a little bit there, but man, Link Academy has just done an unbelievable job of recruiting some of the absolute best players from this region. And the more of them Dennis Gates can get, obviously the better. But most importantly, and to the point, I think you look around at the big man market, I think Tristan Reed is about as close to a must-get as you can get at this point in the process. And you know what? Former Iowa tight end Gavin Hoffman is somebody that I had high hopes for during this offseason, but I haven't heard much about him during this fall camp. I do have a quick update on Hoffman, and also why he's an example of the very delicate balance that Eli Drinkwitz has to figure out and walk. So we're going to talk about that right after these quick words. So Gavin Hoffman, while not a Missouri guy, more or less in the area, of course, Blue Valley, Northwest in Kansas, a highly ranked recruit, not top 150, just outside, maybe 200 or so. But the thing is, 4-star, 3-star, depending on which one you look at. I think what I really looked at, anytime you see Iowa tight end, you start to get excited. And of course, he only spent 1 season at Iowa, didn't see any game action. So it's not as though if you're an Iowa fan, you're going, oh my God, we just lost out on the greatest thing we've ever seen. But I think if you're a Missouri fan, you're hoping, well, if Iowa sees somebody in a tight end, well, I think Missouri probably sees very much that same thing. And the thing with Gavin Hoffman is, while I had some high hopes for him this offseason, seems like he's maybe been dealing with some injuries. A non-contact jersey reportedly for the second straight day. Again, according to Gerard Hamilton over at Power Mizzou. Now, the thing is, if you're on the optimistic side, as I remain, Brett Norfleet is pretty well entrenched at this point as Missouri's number one receiving tight end. I think Jordan Harris is practically a little bit in that Daniel Parker Jr. mold of a sixth offensive lineman sometimes out there on the field. A guy who will occasionally catch a pass, but is more of an excellent blocker. So I think with the injury problems maybe there slowing down Hoffman to some extent, I still think we could see him maybe work into a passing game role, maybe be like Brett Norfleet was at the end of 2023, where at the end of the season, you see him maybe catch a couple touchdown passes against Arkansas. I'm just going to try to speak that one into existence. But another reason Hoffman may have decided to leave Iowa, other than just, maybe it's not working out for me here, he has a big-time Missouri legacy. His mother, Stacy Hoffman, by the way, a 4-year letterman at Missouri women's basketball. And also, he's a cousin of Sophie and Lindsey Cunningham as well. So a big-time Missouri background there for Gavin Hoffman. And you know what? Another Brady Cook update, although this time not a very positive one, as I thought Cook had a pretty solid debut for the Jets in Green Bay in the preseason. Seems like by most accounts that Brady Cook has had a solid training camp. Unfortunately today, though, Brady Cook left the practice field on a cart after injuring his right ankle. Now, I will point something out, especially in the NFL this time of year. A lot of times when people hear, oh no, this guy left on a cart, it's not necessarily like the regular season, an actual game where a lot of times, the cart is definitely a sign of a real serious injury. In training camp, that certainly can be the case, but often it isn't, because quite simply, the spot between where you're injured on that practice field and the MRI room, the training room, or whatever it might be, can sometimes be hundreds of yards away. So simply put, it just makes a lot of practical sense to put anybody on a cart with a lower leg type of injury. And to that point, the Jets' new coach, Aaron Glenn, who was the Detroit Lions defensive coordinator the past few seasons, said, quote, "I think he'll be just fine." But I'll say this, I'm not quite as optimistic as Aaron Glenn is, even though obviously I hope he's right, because, based on talking to people really close to Brady Cook, that high ankle sprain has lingered even to this day for Brady Cook. And famously, he was injured on that. Some would say that might be a hip drop tackle, an illegal hip drop tackle in the NFL. That's not something that's illegal in college, but if you don't know what I'm talking about there, look it up. I'm not going to explain it to you right now. The point here is that Brady Cook, that famous comeback on homecoming, injured his right ankle. It was another right ankle here. The Jets are saying this looks minor. I'm just telling you, I'm a little bit worried here, especially crunch time here for Brady to make the roster. This is less than ideal timing and circumstances for him. So, indeed, I hope the Jets and Aaron Glenn are right that this thing is going to be just fine, but I'm a little bit worried, I got to be honest with you, because as I've heard, hey, if you take those shots to your right ankle for a high ankle sprain or any type of tendon, soft tissue type of injury, especially the tendons, in the short term, it can help you get through the game, but long term, it's actually going to increase your recovery time, which is partially why Brady Cook, I think, still struggling just a little bit at the very least with that high ankle injury all these months later. But hey, thanks you all for joining me here today on Locked On Mizzou. And for your second listen today, definitely check out The Portal with Brian Smith, by the way. My guy, the Scout Master, has you covered with all the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to college football by finding The Portal on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. So until next time, I'm John Miller. This has been Locked On Mizzou.